Hello, welcome back to this little series on English grammar. And I just wanted to talk about something that I think is pretty cool and solidifies English as a Germanic language that it is. A lot of people tend to not take it for that, so uh, let's just think about it a little bit. Not that people deny that it's a Germanic language, but just kind of think it's gone a little bit far from its source, which is definitely true to some extent, but there are still many things that make it beautifully Germanic nonetheless. So, today I'm going to talk about the past participle of Proto-West Germanic verbs. The perfective aspect of verbs are supposed to describe how it's like an event that's completed as a whole rather than something that productively happens over time. It means that something has occurred, and there was a particular tool that Proto-West Germanic languages like English, Dutch, German, others used to indicate that that is the case, and that is what you can see over here in English. However, in Proto-West Germanic, it's generally written like this. So that's ha, and it derives from Proto-Indo-Europeans gom, which means with, which this image is actually really busted. I don't know what happened, but it means with. This is where Latins comes from, and whatever. So that's just kind of what that means. It means with, and in Proto-Germanic it carried over to help form perfective aspects and other things alike. So yeah, this is how it was written in a lot of Old English writing. However, there was a point where it began to be written like this. There are many other forms, but this form definitely carries on into later English and to represent the sound that it actually made for English speakers, because even though I said that this sounds more like ha, like in Dutch, in English that sound died off pretty early on. It is quite a mess to say anyway. We're going to examine this verb over time, which is take. We all love take. Now, I don't know how to pronounce the Old English stuff, but I think the main point is that this is equivalent to our modern take. This is equivalent to our modern took. And you notice here we have that our past participle beginner and our past participle beginner here too. There's probably two forms that it manifested as. And then you go into Middle English and you recognize this. You have take, you have took, and here we have a few alternatives. So at the Middle English period, there is people who preserved the beginning in the form of a y. For the most part, at least formally, if you were to generally like in like a standardized sense. However, for the majority of English speakers, this did not carry over, as in the modern sense, we have take, took, and taken. But in languages like Dutch, they did actually preserve this, like the verb doen, which means to do, modern day doen, and past participle is gedaan, and you have gedaan, and then gedaan. So that's been preserved forever all throughout the language, died off in English. However, there are actually English words that do preserve this, which is the whole point of this. You know, I wasn't just coming here to talk about something that's died off and not used anymore. So I have this reference image over here for aware. However, this isn't the only thing that happens with, but you can notice that aware in Middle English is spelled in a multitude of ways, particularly with an I at the beginning or with a Y. That's because, just like seen over here, that was an often substitute for the sound that people make, because they weren't going ha, they were going and that can be written in many ways in regards to English, because things aren't very formal all the way through the language. So that's why you have different forms that are written with A, I, Y. Pretty much the Y forms are considered obsolete in most spoken English. However, there are some dialects that preserve it. I pretty much doesn't exist anymore for that sense, but A is the prominent one for words like aware. but also for words like alike, which comes from Old English's alike. I believe that's how it's spelled, or maybe it's that. Or nah, I think it's like this. But yeah, and it's also preserved in words like enough, which I wanted to talk about this one because it's actually written with an E instead of an A, I, or Y, which just kind of pays to the fact that English is kind of a mess. The word for enough in Dutch is genoeg. So that's kind of that root there that is consistent throughout the entire language because they had better formalization and standardization than English does. There's a few other words out there that no one really uses in modern day English, but you can find entries like this online. There's words like eclept, which is past participle of a verb related to clap. Then you have a clad, a born, a done, a go, a stolen, a shent, a writ, a blent, a driven, a wis, that's actually not a past participle. But point is that this is a pretty cool thing that a lot of people don't know is a part of their English speech, especially because it's disconnected all over the place, only preserved in a few words like this, which a lot of people might just play this off as what makes words like a flame, where it's this root A is actually a reduced form of Old English's on, which it's like on, it's like essentially the phrase a flame is, or the word aflame is like on flame or on fire, but it's reduced to this. We do that a lot in speech too, so it's no shock that it can just be reduced like that. But those are not the same thing. This is the perfective aspect that is thrown in front of these words that help give it a perfective meaning. So a lot of people don't know that their speech preserves that, and I think it's pretty freaking cool, and definitely worth thought, because it shows an interesting historical aspect to English that has died off for the most part. And this isn't me saying I wish for it to return, but it is a very cool element that exists in English still, and reminds you that it is still a Proto-West Germanic language, it is a West Germanic language, and that it has West Germanic features. And yeah, so thanks for listening.